These children are students at an individual education school. 2 hours of their morning, comprising 1/3 of their curriculum, is devoted to the academic program. There is no homework. There are no report cards. The children do not compete for marks. They learn at their own rate. They learn because they want to.
Individual education is based on sound personality and educational principles. This system operates on the basis of child psychology and educational research evidence. To understand the effectiveness and efficiency of individual education as a means of academic delivery, 3 things must be kept in mind. First, children really want to learn, and they really want to please. Children are basically students, and we adults have to learn to work with them and not against them. Secondly, children differ a great deal in their readiness to learn. For example, children of the same age who have had about the same amount of education may be very different in their academic knowledge and in their learning readiness. Whether because of individual brain development or social or other factors, we are not quite sure, but we do know that there is a lot of individual differences in readiness to learn. Third, research indicates that optimal studying time for children to be about 2 hours per day. How foolish to expect a young child to study 4 or 5 hours daily and then do an hour of homework after school. If we attempt to force children to do more than they're able to do, they become rebellious and discouraged. An ambitious child who cannot meet their parents' expectations then becomes unhappy and often generates a great deal of unhappiness in the family.
These students are beginning the year at James McHenry School in Maryland. They are taking standard scholastic achievement tests to see how much they know of the academic basics. This information will be used to advise them on an appropriate academic program.
That the child is tested at the beginning of the year, and let's say to find out how much the child knows in each of the subjects, language arts, mathematics, science, and social science. Then a teacher advisor recommends to the child at what level the child should study, and then the child decides whether or not to follow the teacher advisor's advice, and the parents may come in on it.
Each child selects the teacher advisor who will counsel him during the year. Usually this counseling process runs smoothly.
And I'm going to explain a little bit about it to you, right? You took the test last week when you came into our school, and you just stayed right on target all the way across in your language arts, mathematics, science, and social science. You were right on your level. So I would suggest for you that you start with Unit 76 in every one of the subjects: language arts, math, science, and social science.
What grade is that?
That's 4th grade level if you were in a regular school. Is that
My mom and dad would be pleased.
Yeah. Are you pleased?
Uh-huh.
Good. Well, you can take this home to your mom and dad and show it to them and explain that based on the tests that you took, this is our suggestion for where you should start in each of these subjects.
Okay.
All right? Good.
So every child has an individual pattern. Now, some kids are flat, you know, 4th grade, 4th grade, 4th grade, but one guy may be 7th grade in reading, 2nd grade in math, and so on. So we advise the child to be at what we call the growing edge.
Jennifer, you took
This child has scored above the 8th grade level in language arts, but the school's curriculum only goes as far as grade 6.
In language arts, you scored above the 8th grade level in your reading, in your vocabulary, and in your grammar. So you really don't need to go to language arts class.
But would it be better for me?
Well, if you'd like to, you can. But you also have the option of going to the library and doing some independent work. So you can decide that. If you want to go to class, you may, or you can go to the library. And then in mathematics, well, you did very well there. I'd suggest you start around Unit 86 for mathematics. And in science, you might start at Unit 76. as well.
In an
as
individual
social
education
science,
school,
7 to 6.
students follow a program which
So what
meets their
grade will it
individual
add up
needs.
If I was in regular school.
This student will not be
Well,
forced
in
to
your
sit through
mathematics, that would be
classes
about
in a
sixth
subject
grade level.
area she already knows well.
And in science
Nor will
and
any
social
student
science, fifth
be
grade
expected to work at a level that is beyond her capability.
Some kids, let's say they're sixth graders, you know, in age, they're 12 years old, but they're reading at second year. So we say go wherever you want. So the child may go at the sixth grade level, but then he has these weekly tests. Let's say he's way out of his range and keeps failing them. Then we have the teacher advisor interviewing him monthly and saying, hey, you took the test, you failed, and now the child has a real decision to make. Shall I go down with the younger kids, see where I belong, or should I stay here where I'm failing all the time? And this becomes a kind of a real existential type of decision that they have to make.
Occasionally, problems do arise.
Remember the first week in school, you took those standardized tests? Well, we've gotten all the results now, and I'd like to make some suggestions to you. We have units of study here, and in language arts, I think you ought to start at Unit 46. And in your mathematics, I'd suggest you go down to Unit 26 to start. And in science and social studies, you could work at Unit 46. I think that's a good place for you to start for those 3 areas. Any questions?
What grade is this?
Well, Unit 46 is about 3rd grade level, and Unit 26 is about 2nd grade level. But in an individual education school, we don't go by grade levels in the subjects.
But my cousin is in this number 76, and I'm only down here.
Are you and your cousin about the same age?
Yeah, but he's a month older than me.
You'd like to be in some classes with him.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that may be. You may be in some classes with him. But I think for your academics, these are good levels for you to begin at. You know, you might want to take this home and share it with your mother and father.
They're not going to like this.
Well, if they have any problem about this, any questions, you and your mother and father and I could get together for a discussion about it.
Well, okay.
All right. Take this with you, will you, Chris?
The students take home the study program they have worked out with their teacher advisor. In this case, the parents react unfavorably to the recommendations.
So this thing right here, this says that I should be in 3rd grade, number 46, and there's 2nd, number
26.
26, and there's
Yeah, that looks like the same as,
46, 46 3rd grade.
so these are 3rd grades and this is 2nd grade?
Yeah, so that's why
I want to put him in the 3rd grade for these classes and the 2nd grade down here. And this is where the 5th graders are supposed to be.
Chris, how in the world did this happen? How did you get so far down in all these things? Just by goofing off and not doing what you should have been, right?
well,
Now, how about Billy? Where is he? How were his test results?
he's up here on number 76.
And everything?
Yeah, he's up here on 76, 5th grade.
Boy,
Well, we're going to have to go to school and find out what this is all about. This just it doesn't make any sense at all.
Many parents will want to come to the school with their child to discuss his program. If the child has previously been in a traditional school, parents may be uncertain about their role and responsibilities. In an individual education school, the final decision about where to start a program is made by the child himself.
very low in everything, and much lower in math than anything else. Now, it looks like for language arts, for example, he's at the 3rd grade level, and math, he's at the 2nd. So now, are you proposing to put him in different classes for each subject with, for instance, 8-year-olds for language art and 7-year-olds for math, and with different teachers? Sounds rather confusing to me.
Right.
what we do during the first week of school is to give the children standardized tests. And then from the results of those tests, we determine where it would be best for the child to start in any of these subjects, right? So for Chris, we determined that the best place for him to start would be at level 46 in language arts, and in mathematics at unit 26, and then in science and social science again at unit 46, right? Now, he will be in classes with children who are his own age. Maybe there'll be children who are younger. Maybe there'll be children a little older. It depends on where the child is going to get the most benefit.
But most of his age group would be up here.
Well,
Is
it
that the
depends
idea?
on the child.
Chris, where's Billy? What level is he, his cousin? Is he working where he should be?
Yeah, I think he was up here.
Mm-hmm. They're the same age.
Is this would be equivalent, say, fifth grade level, or
Right.
his right age?
Well,
or
yes, if he
whatever?
were in a regular school, it would be a fifth grade level. And for Chris, we see him starting on a third grade level and a second grade level here.
And if he
For
were here,
example-
you mean he couldn't handle the
Well, for
material?
example, in mathematics, they'd be working in long division, and he has difficulty with subtraction.
I don't like this idea at all. I'd much
Mhm.
rather see him stay right where he should be. Keep the two of them together, Billy and Chris.
What do you think about that, Chris?
Well, I agree with my parents pretty much.
You do. So you're going to start up on level 76 in language arts and math and science and social science.
Yeah.
You can decide to do that. Then you will take, when you take the unit test, you'll see what the results will be. And maybe you'll be fine, and maybe you will decide that you want to go down a little bit lower. But you make that decision, and that's fine with us.
The teacher advisor decides to confer with the school's consultant about Chris. Every individual education school has a school consultant. He is roughly equivalent to the school counselor, although his major role is to work with the faculty. The school consultant will be a trained professional with a background in education and psychology.
He has agreed to go along with what his parents want, which is to move him up to where his cousin is, so he'd be on what they call the fifth grade level. And I'm really concerned about this because he can't do that work.
That's level 76 you're
Yes,
speaking.
right.
Well, it seems that, looking over his record here, it seems that the child is of well into the normal intelligence range, and I'm fairly familiar with the family situation. I know that there's a great deal of competition between Chris's mom and her sister, where their
Oh.
children are concerned. Looking over his record, I believe that he has the intelligence to catch up. I don't think the challenge has really been there. And I think that this kind of a program that you have him in now, I think the challenge is there sufficient to cause him to be motivated.
So that it's all right for him to go up to Unit 76 in all these courses, and then we'll see how he does with the unit tests.
Exactly.
And then
And let's see if he finds his own level as he moves
Right.
up. If he
Okay.
can't handle this, I think that time will certainly show that.
Okay,
And
thank
of
you.
course, if he can.
Chris meets with his teacher advisor after his first month in school. The monthly conference between a child and his teacher advisor is an important component of the individual education academic program.
We had suggested you start science at Unit 46, and you did. You took 4 tests, and you've passed each one of them. And in social science, you also started at Unit 46, took 4 tests, and you passed each one of those. Now, over in language arts, I think we suggested you start at Unit 46, but you went up to Unit 76.
Because my cousin was there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you took 4 tests in language arts, and these dots indicate that you didn't pass any one of them. Now, over in mathematics, it seems to be the same thing. We had suggested you start at Unit 26, and you started mathematics at Unit 76 also, took 4 tests and failed those also.
Well, you think I should go down?
You could start now, language arts, they passed that unit. You'd have to start at unit 50. But you could get some tutoring. We have tutoring in the afternoons, and that would help you catch up.
That might help.
And we've also passed through these units in mathematics. You could start at unit 30, and there also you could take tutoring. And that could help you to progress more rapidly. So is that agreeable for you? Do you want to move back to these levels and see if you can do the work then and move ahead?
Okay.
You're willing to do that?
Yes.
Now, you may want to discuss this again with your parents. I think if they see what you're doing at level 76, maybe they would be more agreeable to you going back to unit 50 and unit 30. So will you show this to your parents
Okay.
and tell them what's been happening?
There's very little feeling of distress, children being at lower levels, because they'll be at all ages. So instead of having homogeneity age-wise, we'll have heterogeneity in any classroom.
There are no grades in an individual education school, but there are 3 kinds of tests, all of which play an important part in helping the student progress. First, there are standardized achievement tests given at the beginning of the year, which show where the child can best begin his program. Second, there are the end of the unit tests given each week, which show whether the child has achieved mastery in a unit. Third, there are teacher-made tests which provide the teacher advisor with feedback on how the students are coping with classroom instruction. There are 5 ways in which the children can master the academic units. First, of course, is the regular class. Second is self-study in the library. Third is the study hall for peer teaching. Fourth is a tutoring program found in every individual education school. Fifth is home study with help from parents.
First way, and the most common way, about 95% of the students choose that, is the classroom. And that works very simply. The unit of instruction is posted on a bulletin board or disseminated in some way within the school. For example, it may say that on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 o'clock in room 101, Ms. Freeman will do a module on social studies. And any student who wants to learn about that particular specific subject within social studies will show up at Ms. Freeman's classroom on the specified date and time.
In academic
Today we're
classes,
going to do-
teachers are asked to stick to their subjects, to teach the subjects and not the children.
In long division, we now have to subtract. Yes, Chris?
How do you subtract?
Chris, we learned how to subtract in units 21 to 39. We're now up to unit 52. You're in the wrong room, Chris.
Second way is the library. All of the curriculum is encapsulated within particular books, core curriculum booklets like this one, within the library. And if the student chooses to study individually in the library, he goes to the librarian and she'll help him if he needs help to find the particular course material that he needs. And it has the instructional material in it and further references if he wants to look up anything related to that and do follow-on work.
The curriculum is divided into units. This allows the students to study independently and at their own rate if they so choose. A unit is learned, a unit test is taken, and if mastery of the unit is shown through the test, the student then moves on to the next unit. The library is one of the most important classrooms in an individual education school. Children can read, look at pictures, meditate, or daydream. The only rule is complete silence.
Third way is very interesting. It's peer study. That entails going to the study hall, if the student opts to do that, and the supervisor there will direct him to the particular table or cluster of his peers that are working on that subject that's of interest to him, that he's chosen to learn at that particular time. Sit down and share his knowledge on that subject and learn from his peers about that particular item of interest.
Peer teaching involves children helping each other. In an individual education school, children are encouraged to cooperate, not
You
compete.
can't take 9 from 8, and you can't take 7 from 1. So you gotta go over here, take 1 from the 3 becomes a 2, the 0 becomes a 10, and you still can't take 7 from 1. So this becomes a 9, and this becomes a 11, and this becomes an 18. 18 take away 9 is 9, 11 take away 7 is 4, 9 take away 3 is 6, 2 take away 1 is 1. Now I'm going to give you 1, and you do it.
The fourth way is one-on-one tutoring with a teacher, a member of the faculty. If the student chooses to do that, within individual education, all of the teachers set aside at least one period every afternoon to be available for one-on-one work with each student.
Are you free, Mrs. Dade?
Oh, LaShawn, yes, of course. Is there something I can do to help you?
I failed the social studies test, Unit 88.
Unit 88, Social Studies. And that geography of the United States?
Yes.
I want you to have a seat. Let's see. My atlas. Let's see if we can find the United States. And we'll locate some of those states that you were having problems with.
And the fifth way the student may choose is to be at home, to work at home, and study any subject that he wants to, listening to and talking with his friends, his siblings, parents, and learn outside of the school.
Let me clean up here. Right.
Like many parents, this mother enjoys helping her child learn at home.
Let's see. Our first word is house.
House.
Good. Mother.
Mother.
Right. Baby.
Baby.
Good. Kimono.
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 K-O-M.
Okay, this one's a little hard. It's K-I-M-O-N-O. Can you repeat that?
K-I-O.
Kimono.
K-I-O-M.
Okay, we'll go over this one after we finish the words. We'll study that again. Fish.
F-I-S-H.
Scissors.
The child will choose which learning settings suit him best, usually after consultation with his teacher advisor. Children will often choose a mix of study options.
S-C.
Although pure academics take up only 1/3 of the individual education curriculum, students have not suffered. In fact, just the reverse. Edmund Parpart, superintendent of schools for Joliet, Illinois, describes his district's experience with an individual education school.
Individual education school. Children here have done better than they have in the other schools. When Forest Park was a traditional school, and it didn't do very well academically in regards to nationally normed tests. And now Forest Park School is one of the few schools at the top in our district, so that they do well, and they do it, you say, in half the time. But when you look at a total schedule of a regular, traditional kind of school, when you take out the time for art, the PE, the music, and everything else, in essence, they're teaching academics a half a day. We're just saying we're teaching academics a half a day, and we're doing that in the morning, where we think that where children learn best.
They learn more because during the learning process, they want to be there. We have many children in the regular program. If you're a teacher, you know that you've got a class of 30 kids, or maybe 10, who are sitting there smiling, and they're not listening to anything that's going on, and they're not really learning. And they've learned to adjust in the classroom. The learning that takes place here is because the children want to, not because they have to. I think, too, that there's an application of what they learn, the concentrated morning program by the creative courses, and there is an application, and they see the relevance and the need for what they're learning in the morning. I also tell them,
Academic
too, that-
subjects are
and I give an
reinforced
example,
during the
if your
creative
children
courses in the
for some
afternoon.
portion of the time
The
didn't
three
attend a
components of the
class,
individual education curriculum, the academic, creative, and socialization programs, complement each other. The weekly unit testing provides children with immediate feedback on how they are doing. The results go onto the progress chart and are discussed at the monthly meeting between the teacher advisor and the student. Chris meets for the third time with his teacher advisor.
Let's see, in your language arts, you went to the level we had talked about, and look at this, all these tests that you have passed.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, good. Mathematics, you kind of jumped around here. You didn't start where we had suggested, right? At level 30, but you went to level 50 and took 5 tests and didn't pass them. So then you went back to where we had suggested you begin, and look at that.
Ooh, I'm doing pretty good, I guess.
You're understanding it better?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yes, you're progressing all along. You've taken all these tests and passed them up through Unit 45. Very good.
The progress chart provides a graphic representation of how the student is doing. A blank space means that a child has not taken a unit test. A dot means the child has failed a particular unit test. A slash indicates a pass. An X means that the monthly counseling interview has taken place.
Now, in science, you seem to be doing really well here. Now, see up here at level 66, you took a test, and then the next one, 67, there's nothing here.
Well,
You didn't take this unit
yeah,
test.
I guess I didn't take it.
You weren't ready for it, or what?
I don't think I was ready for it. I think it was too hard for me to do.
Okay. And then you went on and passed the next test and failed the next one. But you're making progress in here, very well. And then over in social science, you're just moving right along. You're right up on your level. So how are you feeling about this?
Well, I feel fine, and my parents seem pretty much.
When Chris began his studies at a level which allowed him to acquire basic skills and information which he was missing, he found that he was able to move ahead rapidly.
So we, as a faculty, we advise children, we teach our subjects, whether it's creative subjects or individual subjects, but the child decides. Do you want to learn or not want to learn? It's your business. Do you want to learn? At what level do you want to learn? That's your business. We'll give you information, advice, and so on. But if you don't want to learn, that's fine with us. And what happens is all children want to learn when you give them that. When you try to force them to learn, then they'll fight you.
I'm Dr. Harold McAbee, a professor at Bowie State College and director of the Adler Dreikers Institute of Human Relations. I'd like to introduce Dr. Ray Corsini, who is the founder and developer of Individual Education. And on my immediate left is Linda Smith, who's a counselor. Next is Dr. Charles McIlvaney, who is also a professor at Bowie State College, and Miss Rita Crouch, a teacher. Dr. Corsini, these individuals are very much interested in individual education, and they have a number of questions about the academic aspect of individual education to pose to you. I think Linda has the first question.
Thank you very much for coming and talking with us. Dr. Corsini, what happens when a teacher advisor and a parent do not agree about a child's program?
This rarely happens, but it does happen at times. And it usually happens when the child's performance on the preliminary tests given at the beginning of the year fall below the expectations of the parents. And the teacher advisor may suggest to a child to operate at what the teacher advisor thinks is the child's optimal level, while the parent may prefer to be higher. What happens essentially is that the two adults meet with the child present to discuss the situation. And one of the unique features of individual education is that all academic decisions are the child's. And in individual education, we go after what we call the 4 R's. And the first of the 4 R's is responsibility. And we Adlerians believe that the best way for a child to learn responsibility is by being given responsibility and then taking what we call the logical and natural consequences thereof. I hope that answers your question, Mrs. Smith.
Dr. Corsini, what evidence is there that children in an individual education program benefit more and progress more rapidly than children in a traditional program?
The evidence is considerable on all sides. On the basis of research evidence, for example, in Joliet, Illinois, 2 schools were balanced and in all possible respects, and the evaluation material tests, standard scholastic achievement tests, and also behavioral tests and adjustment tests were given to children in both schools at the beginning of the year, and then the same tests at the end of the year. And the individual education children did slightly better, significantly better, but in actual terms, about 10% better academically, and about that much better in terms of social and behavioral than the children in the traditional school. However, the exciting part is that our kids studied about 2 hours a day, had about 2 hours a day of academic instruction and no homework, in contrast to the children in the other school who had the usual 4, 5, or 6 hours of classroom instruction plus homework. That's one of the evidences. A second evidence, which perhaps you may like even better, is the rank order of schools. In one school in Hawaii, this school had a certain standard relationship. It was in terms of rank order at a certain point, and it had been at that point year after year after year. Then when they shifted to individual education, much to the surprise of everybody, especially the school board that put the system in very reluctantly at first, saw the school advancing relative to other schools that use the traditional method. Further evidence comes in terms of individual children's learning. And we find that some children will actually do 3 or 4 grades in 1 year. And we also get, of course, evidence in terms of the opinions of teachers and school counselors and principals and parents about their children doing better. This does not mean, however, that every child does better. And, but what it does mean overall, there is, the evidence is conclusive from all our schools that this happens.
Well, it's pretty impressive evidence.
I think so.
Dr. Corsini, suppose as a teacher in an individual learning school, I realize that one of the children is not learning. What is my obligation?
As a teacher, you really have no obligation, except if you really felt strongly about it, then you should let the teacher advisor of the child know that. However, this is not necessary because the teacher advisor keeps constant check on every single child through what we call the progress chart. And once a month, every teacher advisor meets with all of the children in her home room, that's her advisory groups, to determine the amount of progress that was made over that monthly period. The obligation of a teacher is to teach, and the obligation of a child is to learn. And so if a child comes into your class and obviously is not learning, so long as that child is not bothering you, just leave the child alone. On the other hand, you never can really tell. The child may be appearing to be sleepy or paying no attention and yet still learning. So the learning is determined by the standard, by the, what we call, the unit tests that we call. Okay, does that help? Yeah, thank you.
What if a child decides he should be in the 4th grade and he's only supposed to be in the 2nd grade? How do you handle that?
You don't handle it. It's more or less the same answer I gave to Ms. Crouch, and that is it's the child's obligation decision. For example, let's assume the child likes you and wants to be in your room, and you've never seen the child before. Suddenly in the middle of the semester he walks in, and he's a little fellow, and you know he's about 8 or 9, and you're teaching, let's say, children of 12 or 13. If he doesn't bother you, and you just let him stay. It's not your obligation at all. If he were to come constantly, then again, you might just mention it to the teacher advisor if you thought there was some kind of a problem.
So he would be allowed to stay in the room as long as he chose to?
As long as you allowed him to.
As long as they're allowed.
Yeah, see, you as a teacher have complete control of your classroom. You determine who you will allow in and who you will allow to stay in and who you will not permit to come in. This is one of the revolutionary aspects of individual education, where we free the teacher from disciplinary problems. You're there to teach, the children are there to learn. Any children who misbehave or interfere with your teaching or with children's learnings, you simply point the finger at the children and enter the door, and all children know, and all faculty members know, and all parents know that this means the child must leave the room. So you have complete control of any child who you think is disruptive.
You said a little while ago that it doesn't work with all children, and I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit.
Well, no system of education works for all children. The experts on education, from what I've been reading, such as Charles Silberman and John Holt and Nathan Hentoff, they actually claim that the present school system is only good for about 10% of children. And I think our system is good for about 95% of children. But there'll be some children who cannot adjust to our system. Consequently, individual education is always, always an alternative system. And those children who do not adjust, if the school isn't right for them or they're not right for the school, they're asked to leave and go somewhere else. And we've had some very interesting situations of children who did not adjust to other schools, really tremendous problems, sent to our schools and adjusting very, very well.
But your best estimate is that only about 5% don't really benefit from this kind of program.
Well, the best evidence I have is from a school in Joliet, Illinois. I talked with the principal, Michael Dubrovich, who told me the following. I hope I have it correct. He found that the first year that they put the system in, about 7% of the children had to be transferred out of the school. The second year, about 5% of the new incoming children, and the third year, about 2%. So on that basis, I would say maybe 98% will adjust.
What accounted for the decline over the 3 years in those that didn't adjust?
Well, I can only speculate, and Mr. Dubrovich suggests the following. The first year, the faculty and the children was new, and they didn't quite know. The second year, when new children came in who began to act up, those who had been there the first year would talk to them and say, hey, you watch yourself, you know, you're getting these checks, they call them checks if you have violations of rules, and you'll be out. So in the third year, now you've got a greater percentage of kids, older kids, who straighten out the younger ones.
So the peer helped.
Oh, very, very strongly, very strongly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, this doesn't have to do with what you were talking about before.
It's all right.
How many children can be in the classroom? I mean, can I set a limit to?
Well, you're really asking two questions. The first is as many children as the room will hold. And literally, I have seen in a classroom that would hold maybe 40 kids in chairs, over 100 there. Yeah. That seems to surprise you, is that right? Yeah. Let me tell you something even more surprising. In a traditional school, most teachers are wanting smaller classes. Just the opposite occurs in individual education. Teachers want larger classes.
Why is that?
Well, the reason is simple. Remember, children have the right to go to any class that they want. They can select any teacher that they want. They can leave the room anytime they want, and so on. So if you as a teacher have a lot of kids coming in, that shows you're a good teacher, that you're popular, and so on. And remember, you have absolute control. So it may be that a teacher's teaching something that's very popular, or that the teacher is a new teacher and a lot of kids want to see. So there may, as I said, over 100 kids may come in standing up, sitting down, lying down. And if it doesn't bother the teacher, fine. See? Now the other question, I forget what you asked.
Can I set a limit?
Oh, yes, yes. For example, in one school, one of the teachers, who's also a popular one, will not have more children than that there are seats. So when all the seats are filled, if any other child tries to come in, she simply does that, and nobody else can come in. So it's up to you as a teacher.
Unique.
What about special children, children with learning disabilities?
Yeah. This is where I think we shine. Remember I said to Professor McIlvaney that we can accommodate about 95% of children, whereas the experts say the traditional school is really only good for 10%. We're really very good with special children. Those are very bright. They can go at their fastest pace. We don't hold them back. Those that are very dull and very slow, they can go at their pace and get all kinds of help, etc. We have something as follows. I want to see if I can make it as clear as I can. The child has two kinds of people, in a sense, that he interacts with every day. And these are the same people playing two roles. Teachers who teach subjects, academic subjects, and the same people who are teacher advisors. Now, the child has a teacher advisor who sees him every day in the homeroom, once a week in a small group for discussion, once a month for academic, for counseling, academic counseling. And you, if you're the teacher advisor, and if I were the child, and if I came into the school, let's say at age 6 in first grade, and if you became my advisor, and I liked you, you might have me at age 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, say, or 12, if it goes up to 13 and so on, and you would in effect become my school parent, and you would get to know me very, very well. There'd be a bonding. Now, if I present any kind of a problem to you or to the school, since we have this relationship, you would be the one that would deal with me directly. Now, if there were some kind of a problem that I would present that would be beyond your capacities, that you wouldn't understand, something that would bother you, well, the most usual thing would be to discuss it with your colleagues. Right? You say, this little Corsini kid, you know, I have this, da, 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 da. And if they don't help you, you don't feel it's enough, we have somebody else. We have a person like Professor McIlvania or someone equivalent, or Dr. Maccabee, who would be a consultant to the school. And so the consultant is in a relationship, what we call a dotted line consulting relationship with the teacher advisor. So you might call him and say, Charlie, you know, if you're on a first name basis, Charlie, I have this kid who he seems to be, you know, having this kind of problem, so on. What do you think? Now, he may handle it by just talking to you, or he might say, I'd like to see the boy, and he may talk to me, or he might talk to both of us, or see my parents, and whatever it is, or he might refer me to specialists, you know, might think I needed glasses, which incidentally would have been a real problem for me. I was at the back of the room in my class in elementary school. I could never see the board, and I did very poorly academically, and I needed glasses, and nobody knew it, including me. And so he would possibly refer me to an ophthalmologist and take care of it.
What about the kid who's just not motivated, just not interested in school? What do you do with kids like that?
Well, the same thing. Same thing. Ordinarily, what we do is wait. We've had cases like one child, if you don't mind a short case history, one child attended one of our schools. This was the first year that an individual education school started in 1972. And this child, we didn't know it, had taken a vow to God, had sworn before God, I will never enter a classroom. Nobody knew this, of course, 12-year-old boy. And at the end of the first month, the teacher advisor saw a blank sheet. He hadn't taken a single test, and he said he had gone to a single class, and this was September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. Meantime, the whole school is buzzing about him, all the faculty. I'm the consultant, they're calling me, and so forth. And at the end of the year, when he was tested, he went up 3 years in reading, about 2 years in science, about 2 years in social science, and 0 years in mathematics. And the reason was, during this time, he didn't go to classes, he went to the library, you see? And in the library, he set himself the project of reading the National Geographic magazine, so he's learning his English and grammar and so on, his science and social science and so forth. Children who are not motivated to learn, the first step then is to leave them alone, do nothing, see what happens, and a lot of them, after a while, if they do nothing, see, a child can't do nothing. He can't do nothing, all right? Double negative. A child has to do something. And what he does, from an Adlerian point of view, is either positive or useful, or it's useless. If it's useless behavior, we catch him, as it were, with our rules. We have these 3 school rules. If it's positive behavior, fine. That's what the school is for learning. So sometimes children will kind of wander around. They'll end up in a library looking up at the ceiling like they don't know, what's going on. And now we have the teacher advisor who sees them every day, who interviews them once a month, and who tries to direct them. And all children are really motivated to improve themselves. That's one of the most basic Adlerian propositions. So there really isn't any such thing as an unmotivated child. It's children who may be not motivated to learn, let's say, mathematics. They may have been scared about mathematics. And if the problem were to continue, as I answered before, the teacher advisor would bring this up to the consultant, who in turn would do whatever he or she could do.
You mentioned earlier, Dr. Corsini, that there was no homework involved in this system of education. What's the philosophical view of that?
Okay, first of all, when I say homework, what I mean is assigned homework. See, teacher, for example, if I were the teacher and you 4 are in my class, and let's say you're not doing too well on a particular topic, I might say to you, Hal, I think you really should practice this. So it's a recommendation, not a demand. The reason for my avoidance of homework comes from a number of items. One is I spent some time researching homework. In the 1920s and 1930s, there were a lot of masters and doctors, researchers on the topic. Every single one came to the surprising conclusion that children did not learn anymore. Those who did homework versus those who did not. Now, this is something I think practically every parent believes. The kids do homework, that improves their education.
Most educators do.
Well, many educators do. I hope not most of them. What I believe, and I've made this statement, and I know it sounds strong, I think homework is the invention of the devil. If there's a devil, he invented it. There's nothing that I can think is more useful, more useless, and more harmful to children than forced homework. It affects their home relationships. It makes liars out of them. They begin to cheat and call up other kids for the answers to the problems. They'll lie to their parents. They don't have homework. There'll be conflicts in the family. And it's simply the most useless thing that we can think of. And we have just absolute evidence that our children learn more in less time without assigned homework. And that's the reason for it.
I can understand, excuse me, the older child being able to pretty much make decisions as to what he's going to learn. But what about the kid in the first, second, third grade? Have you really found that they're mature enough to make those kinds of important decisions as to what's important for them to be learning?
Yes. Let me answer it this way. Very often, in the early periods for some children, they've been so over-supervised and so babyfied and infantilized and so on that they can't even decide to go to the bathroom without getting permission and so forth. And by giving them this freedom and freedom of choice and so on, some of them are completely dismayed. You know, they're so used to being told what to do and so forth and so on. And they kind of flop around and simply don't know. Now, with the advice of the teacher advisor, these kids begin to set themselves down. As a matter of fact, we run into an interesting situation, and the situation is this, that this kind of child wants to be told everything and wants to go from room to room, etc., and doesn't use initiative. And we begin to worry about that they're too good, that they're doing things, so on. For example, let's assume a child learns a particular unit, let's say addition, in the first of 5 periods, and can do it now. Doesn't have to go to classes the next 4. Let's say learns it on Monday, say bright child, yet that child is likely to go to class on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, kind of learning all over again what he already knows, simply because he doesn't want to break out of the pattern. And over time, they begin to get smarter and they begin to realize instead of wasting those 4 days being in class studying what they already know, they could go to the library and read and so forth.
You mentioned earlier 3 rules.
Yeah.
What are those rules?
Okay, the 3 rules are simple. One is do nothing that could be dangerous to yourself or to others or damaging to equipment. The second rule is always be under supervision or going from one supervised place to another. And rule 3 is if a teacher points a finger at you and enter the door, leave the room immediately and in silence. Those are the 3 rules.
What happens if a child doesn't obey one of those rules?
If the child doesn't obey one of the rules, the child will go to the office, sent to the office, and then there are certain consequences. And this will be discussed in one of our tapes on the socialization project.
If the child is pointed out of the room, does he have any options once he gets out into the hallway?
Yeah.
What are his options?
He has 2 options. One, to try to return to the room. So if you as a teacher, let's say you sent me out because I was talking, let's say, and this is like the first time I've done it, and once I'm out, I return, you might think it's all right, fine. But let's assume I've been a persistent violator and you really are right up the hill with me. you point me out, and if I try to come back, you'll do that. And that means I cannot return that session. Now, I'm free to go or to try to enter any other room in the whole school, including the library, the study hall, or any of the other classrooms. Now, let's suppose that I'm a real troublemaker. Nobody wants me. You throw me out, I come to your class, you go like this, like that. Now, the only option I have is to go to the office, and I can sit down and just be there and wait. And that'll happen maybe 1 out of every 200 children. It'll be such a terrific problem that nobody wants the child. And then, of course, this is where the teacher advisor and the consultant come in, and the parents and so on, trying to see what they can do with it.
Is there a particular reason for the pointing and the signals rather than verbal?
Yeah, it's a very good question, of course. What we find is this. If we point to a child, the child gets up and leaves. We've had no problem at all. We've never yet had a single case where a child refused to leave. And we have had now 50 school years of experience. If we do the following, suppose I said to her as a teacher, would you leave? Her most likely reply would be, why? And I'll say, well, you were bothering him. And then she'll say, he started it, and then he may deny it, and we get into this power contest and so on. Meantime, the learning is distracted. So what we find is that on the average, Dr. Ann Pratt did a study of this. On the average, she finds that the typical teacher points out two children in a single hour. That's the average. And it's simple like that, and you just keep on going. So it's very smooth and very simple.
Minimizes it and minimizes some, children's need for attention in that
Yeah, there's
negative
no
way.
attention, simply, yeah.
Well, in your school, do the children have to take tests?
Yes, they have to take standard scholastic achievement tests. They don't have to take teacher-made tests, and they don't have to take unit tests. The unit tests and the progress chart are simply for the child's information. Matter of fact, we even tell children they can cheat if they want to on the unit test, because there's no point to it. The official information that will go to other schools and so on is based on a proctored standard scholastic achievement test.
How often is that given?
It's usually given once a year. It may be given at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year.